Today, we're diving into a really fascinating way of looking at everything. It's a philosophy that suggests the universe and our lives aren't just a bunch of random events or some kind of giant machine. Instead, it argues that all of reality is something much more intentional, a story. So let's see how this one big idea, that reality is a story, tries to solve one of the oldest puzzles in philosophy.
Okay, let's start with a huge one, right? Are you really in control of your life? Is your destiny your own? Or is every single choice you make, every thought you have, just another domino falling in a line that was set up a long, long time ago? This very puzzle is the key to unlocking the entire worldview we're going to explore.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The philosophy we're looking at says the Bible actually seems to hold both of these ideas at the same time. On one hand, you have an all-powerful God who determines everything, but on the other hand, it says we are absolutely free and totally responsible for our choices. So how on earth can both of those be true? It feels like a massive contradiction. So let's lean into that tension, because this way of thinking doesn't try to run away from this contradiction. No, it makes it the very starting point for its entire argument.
And there it is, laid out plain and simple. This is the core paradox this worldview is built to solve. It's not about picking a side, determinism or free will. It's about finding a completely different framework where both can actually be true at the same time, without, breaking reality. So, how does it pull that off?
Well, the solution it offers requires a pretty radical shift in perspective. We have to kind of set aside all the usual metaphors, reality as a machine, reality as a computer simulation, and instead look at everything through this one powerful new lens.
And this is it. This is the key that unlocks the whole thing. The central idea is that created reality has the fundamental nature of a story. And if reality is a story, then God's role isn't like a mechanic working inside the engine. God is the author who exists completely and totally outside of the story itself.
Now, this distinction is absolutely crucial. So in this view, God didn't just find a pile of cosmic parts and build the universe like a craftsman, and he didn't just wave a wand and manipulate existing forces like a wizard. No, it's more profound than that. Like an author, he imagined a completely separate, subordinate reality into existence, purely from his own mind.
This brings us to a really important word, transcendence. Just think about J.R.R. Tolkien and Middle-earth. Tolkien exists completely apart from the world he created, right? He's not bound by its rules. He doesn't age on its timeline. He is transcendent to it. In that exact same way, this philosophy says God is transcendent to our reality. He's on a completely different plane of being.
And this isn't just, a helpful little metaphor. This philosophy is making a much bigger claim. It's arguing that this story-like structure is baked into the very fabric of existence. As the source material puts it, created reality was created to have the logical and conceptual nature of a story. It has a plot, a purpose, a beginning, and an end, all scripted by the author.
Okay, so if reality is a story and God is the author, that begs a pretty big question, right? What part do we play? What does that make us?
And this, right here, is where that whole contradiction we started with just kind of dissolves. Think about a character in a great book, like Hamlet. From inside the story, from Hamlet's own perspective, does he freely choose to struggle and delay? Absolutely. His choices, his anguish, it's all real to him. But from our perspective, as the reader, we know that Shakespeare wrote every single word. The character's freedom and the author's control don't contradict each other. They just exist on two totally different levels of reality. Once you start thinking this way, it naturally leads to the next big question. If we're characters in a story, then what's the point? Why are we here? What is my story for?
According to this philosophy, the answer might surprise you. The main point of your life isn't just about finding personal happiness. Instead, the real meaning of your existence is found in the role you play in the bigger narrative. Each of our lives is like a unique subplot, a small story designed to express something true and meaningful about the character of the author himself.
So how does our moral nature, good and evil, work if we're characters? Well, this philosophy breaks it down into two levels. First, there's our defining essence, or what the Bible calls the flesh. Think of it as our foundational nature, which is described as inherently flawed. And that part, it's not changeable. But then there's our inner commitments, or the heart. This is about our choices, the direction we point our will, and that is changeable. This is so key because it means that even if we can't fix our deepest flaws on our own, we can choose what our life story is fundamentally about.
Every good story needs a plot, right? It needs some kind of central conflict, rising action, and eventually a climax.
And this grand story of reality is no different. It's not just a collection of random scenes. It's all building towards one massive central point.
So what's the main plot? The central quest for all the characters in the story is the pursuit of what this philosophy calls life. And yeah, that's life with a capital L. This isn't just about breathing and having a pulse. It's about reaching the ultimate fulfillment of what a human being was designed to be, a state of being that's otherwise impossible for us to reach because of our flawed nature.
And you can see the plot building throughout the story, through a series of key events, or what the source calls covenants. It starts with a big promise to a man named Abraham about a future blessing for everyone. Then it gets more specific, setting up rules for a relationship with the nation of Israel. Then it narrows even more, promising a future king who will perfectly represent the author's rule. Each step raises the stakes, building anticipation for the big finale.
And that finale, the story's climax, arrives with the introduction of the main character, Jesus. He is presented as the fulfillment of all those earlier promises. He's the blessing, the one who perfectly keeps the rules, and the ultimate king, all rolled into one. He's the protagonist who steps onto the stage to bring the story's central conflict to a head. And this protagonist plays every crucial role needed to resolve the plot. He's the ultimate prophet, who reveals what the whole story is about. He's the high priest, who appeals to the author on behalf of the other flawed characters. He's the offering that actually deals with those flaws. And he's the king who is destined to rule over the story's final chapter. But a climax isn't the end, right? It's the turning point that determines how the story will end. So what does that final chapter look like? And what does it mean for all the other characters, including us? This is where the idea of salvation comes in. And in this story framework, salvation isn't just some abstract concept, it's a narrative outcome. It literally means being rescued from the tragic ending your character was headed for, and instead being written into the story's triumphant, happy ending, achieving that capital L life. But here's the most important part. The characters don't earn this happy ending. They can't. Remember that flawed nature? Instead, this philosophy is clear that this incredible ending is given as a gift. It's a pure act of mercy from the author, who is in complete control of the narrative from the first page to the last.
So we'll leave you with this. This whole system of thought asks us to see all of reality as one grand, unfolding story. It asks us to see ourselves not as accidents or cogs in a machine, but as characters with a real purpose. And that leads to a final, very personal question. If your life is a story being written, what's the theme you wanted to express?